Alright, here's an old computer that I trash picked from the recycling center. This probably isn't the first time most of you have seen a Dell PC like this. This is a Dell Dimension 8300 way back from the Windows XP era. According to the Dell service tag, this has a 2.6 GHz Pentium 4 processor with hyperthreading. This machine uses Dell's clamshell case design, which I've never been particularly fond of. The way the case opens is very unusual, with two buttons on the top and bottom of the machine to push to open the chassis, and the case literally lifts up on its two hinges to reveal the insides. Despite this oddity, this is pretty much a micro ATX compliant system, other than some proprietary shenanigans like the front panel headers and these annoying drive rails. Taking a look at the inside, we can see the traditional Dell green cooling baffle over the processor. Despite being equipped with the heat furnace of a Pentium 4, these machines pull air over the heat sink via the baffle and out a single rear exhaust fan. These machines are based on the PGA 478 CPU socket, which most, if not all, of the 8300s are equipped with some type of Pentium 4 with an 800 megatransfers per second frontside bus. Definitely not helping things at all are these row of bloated capacitors that probably should be replaced. I've seen some Dell Dimension 8300s with all solid capacitors and some with all electrolytic capacitors that haven't bulged, so I guess it's really hit or miss whether you get a good motherboard or not. Speaking of the motherboard, as far as I know, these are actually based on socket 478 Intel desktop boards that Dell obviously customized to their needs. I always thought it was funny how two of the RAM slots are installed at a very sharp angle to the board, almost flat with the motherboard itself. This thing has 512 megabytes of DDR memory installed, but you can actually upgrade these up to 4 gigabytes of DDR400 in dual channel if you really wanted to. Realistically, that would not have been possible when this computer was new because that would have cost a fortune. This is probably one of the earlier Dimension 8300s ordered from Dell because it has a parallel ATA hard drive plugged in next to the floppy connector and the secondary IDE channel for the optical drives. All Dell Dimension 8300s do have two serial ATA connectors and they do actually work. 8 production 8300 machines could actually be ordered with a SATA hard drive from the factory. However, these machines are based on the Intel 875P chipset, which do not support running the serial ATA controller in AHCI mode. Many hard drives installed are limited to first generation serial ATA 1.5 and IDE emulation mode. The parallel ATA optical and hard drives installed obviously are powered fine by Molex, but if you order one of these with a SATA hard drive installed, Dell would have had to install an adapter on this proprietary connector from the power supply for serial ATA power connectors, which actually has an orange 3.3 volt rail, unlike a Molex to SATA adapter, which would not give you this orange wire. And yes, the original owner left the hard drive in here, but even if they had taken the hard drive, it's really not a big deal because Dell actually provides spare mounting rails for the drives inside the case, which is a really nice touch. This motherboard does not have onboard Intel Extreme graphics, as the 8300 was the top-of-the-line model from Dell and therefore would not have come with integrated graphics. I'm not sure what video card's installed, but I can tell you it's some low-end NVIDIA GeForce job. It is an AGP card in the AGP 8X slot. I've actually seen some of these with PCI video cards, which obviously makes no sense at all. There's also an upgraded sound card installed, a Creative Sound Blaster Live PCI, which appears to be original to the machine. You can see there's some proprietary shenanigans with regards to the front panel audio connector, as that is obviously not an AC97 compliant header. Same goes for the front panel power switch and USB header, so you'll definitely have some trouble retrofitting this case with a retail motherboard if you so desired. As I said, this is a standard micro ATX form factor, but for some reason there are actually 5 slots in the expansion bus, so only the top 3 of the 4 PCI slots will be accessible in a standard case. Taking a look at the rear I/O, we got legacy, serial, and parallel ports, diagnostic LED indicators, PS2 keyboard and mouse. Onboard audio is plugged up, which tells us that the PCI sound card was originally ordered and installed by Dell. Below the integrated audio, there's 6 USB 2.0 ports as well as onboard 10100 Ethernet. Here's the aforementioned AGP video card, which has VGA, S-Video, and DVI. And below these 2 empty slots without any slot blanks, the aforementioned Sound Blaster Live with SpeedIF outputs, line level and microphone inputs, line level and rear speaker outputs, and a joystick port. Next to the vent for the rear exhaust fan is the power supply, which I believe is either made by Hypro or Delta. It's rated for 250 watts output with 22 amps on a 5 volt rail and 14 amps on a 12 volt rail, but as far as I know, this is actually a pretty conservative rating because Hypro, AGI, and Delta Electronics are all reputable makers of high quality OEM power supplies, so realistically this thing could probably handle a 300 watt load just fine. Alright, I think it's about time to see if this piece of junk actually works, even if it's extremely dirty with all this dust. But I digress. Without further ado, let's power up this piece of junk and see if this shit works. Oh, there it goes. These machines were nice and quiet as well. BIOS revision A03. I think the latest BIOS revision is actually A07 or something. It's been many years since I worked on one of these. And the CMOS backup battery is dead. I pressed F1 so it should go into the BIOS setup. Alright, we are in the setup program here. The date has been reverted back to the beginning of time, or as far as this machine is concerned at least. The parallel ATA hard drive is detected, which is a 60GB Western Digital drive. This thing does have twin optical drives, but only one of them is detected here. Let's see if the top DVD-ROM drive works. Well, it does eject. Sounds a little rough, but it seems to work. And the bottom DVD-RW drive does not appear to work. Oh well, figure that out later. This thing has 512 megabytes of RAM installed, PC 3200 or DDR400 memory. The processor is a 2.6 GHz Pentium 4 HT, 512 kilobytes of level 2 cache, which means that this is a Northwood Pentium 4, 800 megatransfers per second front side bus. Hyperthreading is disabled, what the hell? Let's definitely fix that up. Integrated devices. Let's go ahead and set the parallel port to Enhanced Capability Port Mode, or ECP, with direct memory access. Let's see, what else is here? Hard drive acoustics. This is the drive's automatic power management setting, which can be controlled in the BIOS. Let's set that to performance, of course. And finally, the system event log. As usual, lots of events recorded. Looks like the original owner was actually using this computer for quite some time with a dead CR2032 backup battery from CMOS. Oh well. Let's go ahead and exit the setup program here and see if this actually boots into an operating system. Windows XP. This shit turns me on. This machine does have a certificate of authenticity stuck to the side with an XP Home Edition product key on it, so that's probably what version of XP this is actually running. The hard drive LEDs on these clamshell machines are ridiculously dim. You can see how sad that LED there is looking as it's flickering away, and we are greeted with a logon screen. Let's get all hyped up here for there being no password, hopefully. Well, I mean, it's not a big deal even if there was a password, because you can reset a Windows XP password in like 2 minutes with a boot CD. Well, I went ahead and waited a couple minutes for all the adware and crap in the system tray to load. This thing does have malware protection installed. It has an old version of McAfee Virus Scan Enterprise, so however, that obviously doesn't protect the computer against stupid users who install a bunch of crap on the computer. Alright, opening up the system properties here. This is running Windows XP Home Edition Service Pack 2. So it probably hasn't been turned on for a while. Intel Pentium 4, 2.6 GHz with 512 megs of RAM. We did enable hyperthreading in the BIOS, so Task Manager should show the 2 CPU usage graphs, like so. Next, let's open up the device manager here. Hype Front 2. Alright. Here's the 60GB Western Digital hard drive. And I was right about the AGP graphics card being a low-end NVIDIA GPU. GeForce 4 MX 440, very obsolete. Yeah, I have to see why the DVD-RW drive isn't working. The DVD-ROM is showing. Onboard 100 Ethernet from Intel. Missing device driver for a sound card. I guess that's probably for the onboard audio, which should be disabled in the BIOS. Parallel port is disabled for some reason. Let's turn that on. There's the hyper-threaded Pentium 4 processor, Creative Sound Blaster Live sound card, and finally the Intel 875p chipset. So nothing too unexpected in terms of hardware on this machine. Okay, now let's be good and nosy and see if the hard drive is full of personal documents. Oh well, the 60GB hard drive is actually completely full. Don't do this, kids. Be sure to erase your hard drives when you throw away your computer illegally at the recycling center. And don't worry, I'll go ahead and erase this hard drive in a moment. Holy shit. Well, I tried to see if there's any music on here at least. And, well, this is kind of unexpected. A bunch of adult weeaboo shit installed in this computer. Hentai strip poker, sex games, pinball sex, adult hentai, adult Tetris, adult strip poker, triple X simulator. And also Banjo-Kazooie, although if Banjo-Kazooie was porn, that would be my kind of anthropomorphic pornography, but yeah, gets me every time. Things like this, never gets old. Seriously, if you're gonna have this kind of shit on your computer, at least erase the hard drive or throw away the hard drive before you throw away your computer. But yeah, all in all, I think this is a good place to stop. The Dimension 8300 was the top-of-the-line model from Dell back in the early 2000s. Although these things are pretty much obsolete for productivity these days, they're still kinda nice to play around with once in a while. Go ahead and throw in a high-end AGP video card in there and you got yourself a vintage Windows XP gaming rig. Minus the hentai, of course.